So I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about deal making. You have a very well-established reputation as a deal maker. You did some of the highest profile deals around the Actavis acquisition of Allergan and Allergan's transaction with AbbVie. I think you did $150 billion worth of deals in just 5 years.
Yeah, 280 total.
280 total. Would love to.
Not that I'm counting.
Exactly. We can still make it 300 or 400. Would love to go into maybe some of those, right? And to the extent you're open to sharing any stories, right, from those, or what was particularly difficult, interesting, any learnings on how you look at those transactions, the risk versus the reward. I bet there are many components, and they're high complex, high stress situations. So would love to talk about that part.
Yeah, sure. But just maybe as a backdrop, strategically, not all deals, but a vast majority of the deals that I did were caused by one particular strategic issue. And that is that in the pharmaceutical space in particular, the costs of R&D have risen dramatically. And so when I started in this industry, having a $600 or $700 million R&D budget was a pretty big budget. Now it's a $7 or $8 billion R&D budget is kind of the standard for big pharma. And so a lot of the companies I've been involved with, there was a lot of consolidation in the industry that was driven in large part around consolidation of R&D and the massive expense. You guys probably have data on this, but what does it take to bring a pharmaceutical to market today? Probably $2 billion.
2 to 3, yeah.
Yeah, $2 to $3 billion.
If you count all the failures, yep.
Yeah.
2 to 3.
So, driving innovation is not inexpensive, and in fact, it's high risk, high reward when one works. But I always say the losers pay for the winners. We never talk about the losers. We only complain about the winners. And so there's a lot of cost in proving the risk benefit of a drug and discovering the science that sits underneath it. And so that has precipitated a lot of the rationale behind it. Other reasons for that I've done deals is to gain scale to markets or gain efficiencies in the distribution of the drugs. And so that tends to be how I think about it. So when I think about deal making, I've done a lot of little ones and a lot of massive ones. I always think about, you lead with the strategic rationale. Why is 1 + 1 something better than 2, right? And if you can't articulate, and I always say this to my boards or to my teams, if you can't say it simply in 30 seconds and everyone says, yeah, that makes sense, then you don't have a strong strategic rationale for the deal, right? If you need, I keep picking on you, but if you need a McKinsey deck of 100 slides to explain the strategic rationale, it doesn't exist. Now, certainly you back it up with that, and those are important and necessary, so I'm saying it a bit tongue-in-cheek.
It's our sponsor,
Yeah.
Don't say anything bad.
He knows I love him. He knows I love him, and I love McKinsey, and they add a lot of value. And so please take it in the... But really, if you can't say in the elevator speech why you're doing what you're doing, then you have no permission to even play the game. The second thing is, what's the financial rationale, right? How are you going to pay for the deal? What kind of synergies are you going to get out of the deal? How are you going to make an organization that isn't financially strong is a weak organization, particularly in our industry where R&D is such a major expense line for us, with long, 10-year payoffs on investments being made today. And so, you have to be a little bit more long-term oriented in our industry than just, what's going to work to make the budget for 2025. It has to be, how does this going to look in 2035 when you put it all together? And so that's driven it. Now, all deals have their own personalities and reasons. Sometimes, you can get a deal done because the other opponent or the target has a problem, right? And as a result, the board of that company or the shareholders of that company realize they're better off cashing out now because they can't fix their own problem too quickly or too easily. Other times it's because the target, for example, in Iran, Allergan, we had Botox, but I felt that to really maximize our medical aesthetics franchise, we needed to own more than one product in that field. And so strategically, I wanted to create a moat around the dermatologist or plastic surgeon to provide them with all the best products in that particular field. And so we went out and we acquired a lot of little companies that were making one product kind of companies to build a portfolio. And then, marketing and sales-wise, you create a bundle and you create volume-based purchasing, and you create a consumer app with frequent flyer points because you have scale, right? So in that instance, scale made a lot of sense. In other cases, I've looked at it in terms of R&D, right? We were big in neurology at Allergan. We made Alzheimer's treatments, we made mental health drugs, and we looked at how do we get to the greatest science to solve for example, it was a spectacular failure, but was to really look at a novel mechanism for depression. And we spent, I hate to admit it, almost $2 billion to learn that the drug didn't work. And so, there, though, I felt like we had innovated Lexapro. We had created a new drug that's on the market today and doing very well, Vraylar for bipolar depression, schizophrenia, and major depressive disorders. And I felt like if we could solve, in that category, most drugs only work, perhaps 30%, and that may be generous for most patients. And even then, only for some limited period of time. If we could find the real mechanism of action that could change the game for patients with mental health disorders, it was worth the investment. I still have few regrets, maybe how we dosed the patients in the study. I'd love to go back and redo with the benefit of hindsight, but unfortunately you don't get those do-overs.
You always wonder on those when you get the data.
I really do believe with the post hoc analysis we underdosed, but
yeah,
we saw no safeties. I mean, in fairness, and I say this to my wife all the time, I'll do my PSA for a second. I've been in the drug industry a long time. There is no free pass. If you don't need medicine, don't take it. If you need it, absolutely take it. But there's no free pass. For every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. Mm-hmm. And so every drug has a side effect. Every drug does something chemically or biologically in your body. And when you need it, you need it. And when you don't need it, you don't need it. So listen to your doctor. Don't self-medicate.